What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into a new rapid reaction. Nick and I did not expect to be talking about this week, but here we are. Some major news out of Pensacola, Florida, as Jaden Rashada, former Florida quarterback signee, has filed a lawsuit against Billy Napier, as well as Marcus Castro Walker and Hugh Hathcock over the NIL deal and fiasco that he had with Florida that ultimately led to him being rescinded from his letter of intent. He landed at Arizona State, is now currently at the University of Georgia. We will get into this news. We will also be joined by an attorney here in the state of Florida to get his reaction to this and kind of what it could mean for all parties involved. But Nick, what was your reaction when you saw this news and everything you found out since working the phones today?
Yeah, this is kind of been coming down the pipeline. This has been in the works from the Rashada side. We just weren't sure if they were going to go through with a lawsuit. I think, at the time, the thought was, going back a year ago, before Jaden even went to Arizona State, this has been kicked around by attorneys in the Rashada family. At the time, we didn't think that they were going to go through with a lawsuit. I've talked to a bunch of people today who had been part of the NCAA's now put on pause investigation into everything that happened with Jaden Rashada. So it's been in the works for a long time, and it'll be interesting to see how far this gets. And Davarian will be able to explain that better, but how far this will get in terms of court, and do the parties even want to get to a jury trial and to go through discovery, or do you make claims, make a complaint, and hope to settle, which a lot of these cases or cases like this end up doing.
And obviously this is, more negative press for Florida, especially coming off of a week where
we've been doing so well, Zach. We've been doing so well.
They had a little bit of momentum going. They closed out their transfer class on a strong note. And then this comes up, and not only is it going to play out the ways it's going to play out, and maybe not much comes from it in terms of the public, but this just adds another chapter and another storyline to the Florida-Georgia rivalry. And the fact that Kirby Smart is involved, the fact that he's included in this report as someone that gave his blessing on this lawsuit, it wouldn't be college football rivalries without something like that, right, Nick?
The SEC, it just means more.
And it is interesting, the timing of it, being that he's at Georgia. I don't think that this was encouraged by UGA. This is something I think that Rashada and his his party had been working towards. What did you think about the decision on who they chose to name in the lawsuit, and the fact that the UAA, the University of Florida, and Scott Strickland are not included?
Yeah, I think it goes to show, at least in terms, and I'd rather get a lawyer's opinion, but I think it goes to show, hey, what do we think we have in terms of evidence that we think we can put out? Because I think you try to, when you make a claim or when you make a suit like this, you try to say as little as possible to get it not thrown out if it goes in front of a judge, to not show your whole hand, but enough that, hey, if we need to go to trial, we can. And then you go into discovery, which is where you really start building your case. So I think it would say that they feel good about or would like to put pressure on those certain people. And obviously naming Billy Napier would put pressure on not just Billy, but also the University of Florida, who employs him with a very nice salary.
And there's going to be a lot of questions that come from this, what this could mean for Billy, and of course, who's at fault here, if there is any fault to be handed out. We're going to try and get on the legal side of this with an attorney based in the state of Florida, Jacksonville to be specific, Davarian Russo. Some of you guys might know him on Twitter by his other account, but we're going to bring Vari on now to talk about this lawsuit and what it means for all parties involved. Vari, thanks for joining us. Jacksonville in the background, looking good. Appreciate you hopping on, man.
Our beautiful skyline in the background, all 3 skyscrapers that we've got.
I can smell the Maxwell coffee from here.
Ah, yes, I just had some, so you're getting the best of me right now. But what's up, guys? I appreciate the opportunity to hop on. I mean, obviously, I have a little subject matter expertise in these types of things, considering I sue people for a living. But go ahead, fire away. I mean, what do you guys want to know?
I think we can start with some of the discussion you've created on this today. Some of the comments that you've made. We can start there. One of the things that you posted, Vari, is if Rashada didn't sue UF or the UAA, that tells you Napier's actions are not likely the true target of the lawsuit. This is particularly the case if the UAA is considered a private entity that has its own insurance policy. Expand more on that and kind of what you drew from that.
Yeah. So, all right. So let me this is going to be sort of the overarching theme of talking about this lawsuit that dropped today. There's a lot of speculation, even from my part. I mean, there's limited information out there as to what's really going on. It's protected by attorney-client privilege, all of that good stuff. So you're just I'm reading the tea leaves a little bit here. So the reason why I put that out there is when you are suing somebody in civil court, you know what you're trying to do? You're trying to get money. That's literally it. You're not changing the world. You're not righting a bunch of wrongs. Like I tell my clients this all the time. I was like, if that's what you're here for, coming to me, then you came to the wrong place. The only thing I can do is get you money because that's the only remedy that our country allows us to pursue in civil courts most of the time. So what I was talking about with them not naming the UAA and UF, first of all, you do typically want to avoid naming a government entity in a lawsuit like the University of Florida. And that's because of this concept called sovereign immunity, which is basically that like the government won't let you sue the government unless they say you can sue the government. And so in the state of Florida, we have a limited waiver on sovereign immunity up to $200,000. So you could have the best lawsuit in the world and win at trial against the University of Florida, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to be capped at $200,000, which is not worth it from a dollars and cents standpoint. So that part makes a little bit of sense in them not bringing UF into the lawsuit. But, so when I say you're just trying to get money, you're just trying to find a collectible pocket. So if you're suing Billy Napier individually, that's usually not the way to go when you're suing people, because, you let things like emotions get into play. People will fight for the principle of it. You're not going to have Billy Napier stroking a check to Jaden Rashada and
the
his
Georgia
attorney.
quarterback.
Yeah, that's not going to be of a sufficient amount to actually get a case.
They're looking for $10 million, which is more than Napier makes in a single year.
Yeah, and so I mean, sure, Napier's got more money than most of us, but he doesn't have the type of money that's going to take to resolve what they're looking for. So I'm bringing this all up by saying you got to look for an insurance policy. You're looking for an insurance company who's going to foot the bill. So, and there's a lot of technicalities that I'm not going to get into, but naming the UAA, which is a private entity separate and distinct from the University of Florida, is likely going to increase the collectability of the lawsuit. So that's what I was interested in, just by hearing who was and wasn't named in the lawsuit, and thinking that, okay, Billy may not be the one. It may not be Billy's actions that are the gotcha from their standpoint that says, okay, this is how we get them on the hook for liability. But again, I'd like to say I'm just speculating. I don't have a ton of info on it. But that was my initial thought as far as that tweet was concerned, because you got to find the money somehow.
Sure.
And now Hathcock individually is probably actually one of the few people on this planet that is collectible, considering the finances he's got.
Is it interesting that they're coming after his automotive company that he's now sold? How can that even?
From reading the complaint, it would seem that you're tying in the company, probably or maybe because he sold it, which means those assets that he sold the company for would still be able to, you could collect on the assets that he sold the company for?
So here's why you still name the company. Most insurance policies are what's called occurrence-based policies, which means that, there's things called statute of limitations, obviously, but if I were to cause a wreck in my car today and you were to sue me 10 years down the road, I've got a whole new insurance company, new car, all that stuff. It doesn't matter because the occurrence happened during the policy period. That insurance company is still on the hook. So what it could be is that this dealership has an insurance policy, maybe they're somehow a party to the agreement. And so they're being sued because that brings that insurance policy to the table for the date of the loss, so to speak.
Another
so it's kind of
collectible pocket.
going back, you got to find the money. You got to find a way to actually get your client some money. So they may need to bring some sort of insurance policy connected to the dealership in play. That would be my guess. I mean, that's the type of things I think of.
Now what would?
Go ahead, Nick.
Now I think one distinction that I made to our readers, and I think it's probably important as I find out the wording here that an attorney told me. I think it's important to know that a complaint lists allegations, not evidence. The Rashada suit, as we're reading it, and I read the 36-page suit, is listing allegations and grievances to the court. They are under no reasoning to provide evidence for the allegations, and that would be a process that would only probably come out if it even gets to the point of discovery.
Yeah. So, and I guess you're not reading my tweet, but I basically said something very similar. So, the best way to think of a complaint is it just sets the stage for the game. So what you want to do when you're drafting a complaint, the allegations in your complaint basically frame what discovery you're allowed to do also during the case. So you've heard the saying, throw a bunch of shit at the wall and find out what sticks. That's also sort of what you do when you draft a complaint. You throw any and all cognizable causes of action in there, and knowing that the reality is that, maybe 60 to 70% of your allegations aren't actually going to win, but you got to find the one that does. And it's important, as an attorney, you got to understand that, when you're filing a lawsuit, you don't know what you don't know. You're listening to your client, you're hearing what they're saying about what happened and all that. But if you're a good attorney, you know that you don't just take their word for it. And the jury's obviously going to hear both sides. So you basically sue for anything and everything. And then you jump into the discovery process. And it's all right, these are the rules of the game. I'm allowed to do discovery on all of these different counts. And then what happens is over months, years, it's like the funnel. It narrows down into the actual issues that you're either going to have a trial on or that you've proven and are going to result in a settlement.
Now, as I understand the timeline on this, and Nick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on December 6th, the deal that he had signed with Gator Collective was terminated. And as I understand it, he never signed a new deal after that termination. He never put pen to paper and reached a new deal. And if that's the case, how binding are conversations after January 6th that anybody had with Rashada? Because there was nothing on paper. If I say I'm going to give you $1 million and then you don't get it, can you sue me for that if we don't have an agreement?
And Eddie Rojas has maintained that he terminated that contract legally, and him not being included or that not being included would tell me that the Rashadas don't feel that the contract that they were in agreement on was terminated unfairly or illegally. Because if that was, it would be another thing you would throw in there, I would think.
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential moving parts there. So as a threshold matter, we all think of contracts as literally pieces of paper that we sign, but you can have an oral contract as well. I could promise to give Nick my truck if he gave me $100, and if we agreed on that, just because it's not in writing.
I agree.
Shit. Well, it's a nice truck. Miles are getting up there, but I mean, like, you can have an oral contract. So, like, and what Eddie says about the written contract and how that was ultimately terminated, there can be subsequent conversations that create a new contractual obligation. I mean, so like, that is a possibility. But you remember, I mean, again, what I would say is, again, I haven't read it. In fact,
Sure.
Please send it to me, Nick, and I would like to actually read it. I've just been too busy to download the whole thing. But you're throwing everything against the wall and hoping that things stick. And I'd also say, I mean, this is probably no surprise, that outside of just the merits of the lawsuit in general, there are a lot of external pressures to get things resolved. So, and I've been in that position as well, where you may sue a business, and even if you feel good about the strength of your lawsuit, that there's going to be a lot of pressure on the other side to make that thing go away, and then you leverage that into a better result for your client. And they very well, I mean, this lawyer could be saying, look, we're going to file all these causes of action. We're going to include some very pointed claims like fraud and all of that, and it's going to get the Twitter sphere buzzing, and there's going to be attorneys from Jacksonville hopping on Q&As, and it's going to spread like wildfire. And regardless of the merits of the claim, folks like Billy Napier, UF, anybody that's involved with that deal, definitely, they were probably hoping that they heard the last of it, back, what was that, like early February or so, when it started getting off the airwaves. So, I mean, let's not forget about that aspect of it all.
Yeah.
Rashada has probably smartly read the tea leaves for how, like, the news was received by the national media in general. He definitely looked like a victim. We looked incompetent, all that good stuff. And he's leveraging it now for likely some dollars and cents. And that's not to say that he doesn't have legit claims. I mean, I'm obviously not the one that knows the facts of all the conversations, but let's definitely not forget about that, because that's a tool that is definitely used regularly, and I'm positive is being used this time around.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Final thing for you, Vari, as as we see what's to come, what do you see as maybe best case scenario for Florida, and I guess their side of things, and then what could be the worst case scenario?
I mean, worst case scenario is that a bunch of discovery is taken. There's a bunch of public filings that disclose some very negative conversations, that type of stuff. Depositions taken where people put their foot in their mouth. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of money to you and I, but this isn't the type of money that's making anybody lose sleep that's associated with the University of Florida. So to me, that is the worst case. I mean, and obviously for folks like Billy Napier, worst case for him is that evidence of, that would support cause gets brought up in certain situations. On a personal level, that would be the worst thing for him,
Sure.
That affects his viability as a coach going forward and all that good stuff. And you know what? The best case scenario here is that UF just that they cut it loose, quite frankly. I mean, again, we talk about the external factors of a lawsuit, and it's not always about the merits. I have to have these conversations with people all the time, to say, look, yeah, you're right, but there can be a lot worse things that come out of it, as opposed to just paying somebody a little money. So, and the lawyer for Rashada probably knows that. The best case for UF is that they probably enter in some sort of binding settlement agreement with a confidentiality provision. That way, you're
pretty ironclad confidentiality agreement if you're cutting a check with 2 commas in it.
And you know what, man? That may not even be a check with 2 commas. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with just throwing $13 million out there. You have to show how much you're actually damaged as a result of the alleged breach of contract. And let me talk about that for a second. It's not, I doubt the contract, and I haven't looked at it, said, if you, I don't know, do X, we will pay you $13 million. That may be the maximum value of the contract with all incentives, all conditions met, and all of that good stuff.
That was maximum. That was a 13.85 over 4 years. The contract that the Rashadas had provided to Pete Nakos even broke it down what you would be making per year, which is also, then broken down into semesters, and you're getting weekly or biweekly checks.
So, okay. And what I'm saying is the Rashada had the burden of proving that, but for, the breach of contract, he would have gotten all of that money. That's a harder thing than it sounds to prove. So I wouldn't be surprised if what it takes to resolve it and go away is a fraction of what the quote unquote lawsuit price is, and it would incentivize UF maybe to take advantage of that sooner rather than later, just, so people shut up about it for good. Because I guess the benefit of it for UF is if you have a confidentiality provision, he literally cannot talk about the subject matter of the lawsuit ever again. Or he's subject to potential penalties, where you basically undo the money that they paid him. So, because as it stands right now, I mean, I guess, every 6 months this story could pop back up and he could talk to reporters and all that stuff. So I'd say that's like a silver lining for UF if they were to settle the case and get this, gone forever.
The lawsuit that they filed was filed with the language of fraud, which I thought was interesting, because then, to my understanding from talking with an attorney, you would have to prove that the three plaintiffs, or the three defendants, excuse me, were working together to provide this contract for you to sign under false pretenses to defraud you out of the money offered.
Yeah, I mean, fraud is an extremely tough thing to prove without a clear gotcha, because you have to show an evidence of intent that they said things in order to mislead you, and that it actually did ultimately mislead you. I mean, and that's the thing. Most fraudsters are smart people who know how to artfully cover their tracks. So unless you have a literal something in writing saying, we're going to tell him this so that this happens, even though, these facts may not be the case, fraud is an extremely tough thing to prove. But again, I keep circling back to the other external the language of accusing somebody of fraud has a lot of teeth to it. It gets people talking, and it gets, the message board spinning and all of that. But yeah, you would have to show that. And you'd also, sometimes fraud can be.
And the burden of proof is on the plaintiff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically, this were to go to trial, Billy Napier could sit there the whole time and say nothing. As a lawyer could say nothing, and the plaintiff could still lose, because they have to put on evidence to prove their claims. So, and I could tell you also, sometimes fraud, you don't want to prove fraud, because remember, all you're trying to do is get money. So, and a lot of insurance policies have exclusions for if somebody does something fraudulent. Like, my insured did something fraudulent, I'm not covering this claim anymore. So that the fraud stuff, I mean, again, but you don't know what you don't know. So maybe you get lucky and you prove it. But we're talking about how discovery is like a funnel and it narrows things. I doubt if this case were to go to trial on the back end, that fraud would be like one of the winning claims that they're looking at. And that's a reach.
Well, Vari, I'm glad we were able to reach you. You can shed some light on this. We'll see if this gets settled out of court, or if Nick or I end up in Pensacola.
Man, I may hop into the courthouse to check that one out. That would be one of the more interesting cases that goes down. But I would listen. I think the numbers are like 97% of cases settle before trial. I mean, this one has, I'd say, less than a fraction of a percent of actually resulting in a trial.
Well, we will be following it, and I'm sure you will as well, Vari. Let folks know where they can find you if they're in the Jacksonville area and need an attorney.
Where they can retain your legal services.
So I recently made a move. I represent injured folks in the Jacksonville area. I work at Morgan & Morgan. But shoot me a message on Twitter at 157Gale. I talk about a lot of interesting things, such as the greatest city on the planet, which is Jacksonville, Florida. And here's my UF degree in the background, so you guys know I'm legit.
There it is.
Vari, appreciate you hopping on, man. Thanks for the time.
All right, talk to you guys later.
All right, take care. Devarian Russo joins the show to talk about a storyline that I did not think that we would be discussing, Nick, but here we are. And there is no off season. There is no dull moment in Gator Nation, as our buddy Dave Waters says. And now we wait and see what the next chapter of the Jaden Rashada story will be.
Yeah, I think it. I think it. From talking with Vari and another attorney, I think it's likely a case that gets settled. He said, most cases like this go to a settlement. You're looking. Jaden Rashada feels like he was wrongfully led down a path, and didn't collect on money, and is looking to collect on something. It might not be the full 13, it might not be a full 10, but collect something on what he thinks was wrongfully taken from him. I think Vari did a really good job, spoke well about kind of the legal process and legal system. To me, I doubt that this makes it to trial. If it does, though, I have a couple suits, Zach. But it is interesting. I do think there's one thing, like you brought it up a little bit, and I've seen it a ton on the message boards on social media. Like, this was in the works well before Jaden went to Arizona State.
No, Kirby drafted the lawsuit for him, Nick.
Funny to read it, but that's not, to my knowledge, not what is happening here. This was not a get to Athens and then like, hey man, what happened over there in Gainesville?
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you.
Yeah. So
one thing's for sure, though, this will be a storyline for the Georgia week, 1,000%.
Yes. Yes, it will.
They might talk about this more than the matchup.
Yeah.
Over a quarterback that won't even be playing in the game.
Maybe Florida's 7-0 at that point, Zach. Who knows?
Who knows? One little thing to end it on, but when they flipped Rashada from Miami, Nick, back in November of 2022, they did not have DJ Lagway yet committed, and they also did not have Graham Mertz as a transfer.
Mm-hmm.
But when they got to signing day in mid-December of 2022, they did have DJ Lagway committed, and they did have Graham Mertz on board as a transfer signed. And hindsight is 2020, of course. But I bet you if Billy could go back to that day when his press conference was delayed an hour, knowing what he knows now, he probably would have just let Jaden Rashada walk.
Would have freed up my entire month of January in the year of our Lord 2023. Came back up in January of 2024. But yeah, I mean,
hindsight's 2020. We didn't know about Graham Mertz what we know now back in December of 2022. But like, if you knew that he was going to play as good as he did last season, there's no way Jaden Rashada was going to start over him. And if he's going to cause all this drama and NIL, it's like, just let him walk. But that's easy to say now, because back then, if they would have lost Jaden Rashada on signing day after flipping him and losing him in their class, it would have been catastrophic.
Yeah.
It's just, you can understand why they work so hard to get him signed, but come to find out, they didn't even need to.
Yeah. And
don't forget, real quick, don't forget there was also that discussion about DJ Lagway reclassifying that was out there for a while. They could have just went with that too.
Yeah, I think as it kind of played out, I thought, man, this is a lot of headache, and I think DJ's a better player, and that Jaden Rashada wouldn't have started over DJ in the long run either.
He wouldn't have started short term or long term.
Yeah, I think, obviously this stuff will continue to play out. Billy Napier was Pete Nakos obtained that, given a subpoena, a notice of the claims. He's got, I think it's 21 days to respond to that. So there'll be more stuff coming out legally. Florida has the Sunshine Act. All of this stuff is publicly accessible, not just to reporters, but to everyone sitting here listening to us talk. You can go and access that publicly. I think Discovery does not do anyone any good. Imagine the private imagine the group chats, the group texts that you're in, and things you say with your friends that you think are private. All of a sudden now you get a subpoena and that becomes public record. And there's lots of things you would say privately, thinking it's private, just to a friend or to somebody that you don't necessarily want lawyers to have and to be able to share.
And I forgot to ask Vari, but I wonder, what are the chances that this gets thrown out? You're in a state of Florida court room.
The lawyer I spoke with said that based on reading, and I sent them the claim, based on reading it, they did not think that the case a judge would throw the case out. He would say there's enough here that we can continue on, go to Discovery.
Ooh. Well, we'll see. And if you
but then also, if you're just trying to get money, which I think is what Rashada's trying to do, because you feel wronged, you're trying to get at least a portion of what you were promised, or you believe it to be promised, back. If you take it all the way to trial, there's a chance you spend a bunch of money on lawyers and a jury of your peers says, no, we agree with the defendants, and you get nothing. And not only do you get nothing, you end up paying potentially lawyer fees. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it ends up in a settlement, though, as we sit here hours after the news breaks trying to prognosticate on it. I think it's something that would head towards a settlement.
Well, make sure that you guys stay locked with Gators Online and On3. Shout out to Pete Nakos for breaking this story. He's been all over this along with Nick. They've been doing so much reporting, and we will continue to do that at Gators Online and On3. If you did not see the statement released today from the University of Florida, we do not comment on ongoing litigation, and neither the University Athletic Association nor the university are named in the complaint. The UAA will provide for Coach Napier's personal counsel, and we will direct all questions to those representatives. So we will continue to monitor this, provide you guys with updates, things that we're hearing on the message board. So make sure that you guys, if you want to stay up on everything that we're hearing, not only just from this, but of course, all things Florida football coverage and recruiting, you can take advantage of our promo code right now. For all of you that are listening on YouTube, this is just for you guys. You've made it over 30 minutes into the show, and this is your treat. If you're not subscribed to Gators Online, you go to sign up, punch in that code UF1. You can get 2 months for just $1. So stay on top of all of this lawsuit and, of course, all the recruiting that's about to heat up with official visits starting this summer. For Nick Delatorre, I'm Zach Abolverdi. Thanks to Vari for joining us. We'll see you guys for the Gators Online show.